Much, Mr. Speaker.
I call Jono Naylor, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I perhaps will pick up a little bit on where my colleague Matt Ducey just left off. But firstly, I just want to say this report is the whole reason why we have a Children's Commissioner. It's important and that we have somebody who sits external to the system, who can provide some commentary on the system, can provide some advocacy and some autonomous accountability to the plight of children in New Zealand, and that's the role of the Children's Commissioner, and that's what this report has done. In some sense, there is no new news here. These are things that have already been identified, I guess, but it is useful when you have a report like this to put them all in the one place and then to be able to move on. It's, I think, a difficult thing for us to address. It's a difficult thing for us to realise, all of us who are involved in the government or parliament that is ultimately responsible for the way the child, youth and family system works and how it is treating our most vulnerable young people. And this is, I guess, very confrontational in the terms of the things that we need to address, but I think will ultimately provide a better outcome. I think it's again been highlighted today that this is something that the Minister has already been identifying. It confirms that she is on the right track with establishing her expert panel and with establishing her youth advisory panel. If this were simple to solve, Mr. Speaker, 14 reviews would have solved it in the past. Any one of those 14 reviews surely would have identified a simple answer had it been available. But these are deep and long entrenched issues that we need to address. The 1989 Children, Young Persons and Their Families Act, or I think it was just the Children, Young Persons Act actually originally, was groundbreaking in its time, but it is certainly time that we look at a complete overhaul as to the way that we do this. Mr. Speaker, I spent a short period of my time as a child, youth and family social worker, and I can recall a particular instance in 1997, effectively with 8 social workers and 2 police, and a scene that I could only describe as storming somebody's house and uplifting 4 children aged 5 to 12 from their mother and stepfather 1 week before Christmas while they were sitting around in front of their Christmas tree. The images of that scene are etched firmly in my mind 20 years later, and I can only begin to imagine how firmly they are etched in the minds of those children as to what happened. Now, Mr. Speaker, there were good, sound social work reasons for us to take that action. All the evidence pointed towards us taking that action, but to this day, I'm not entirely convinced whether or not the emotional harm that we inflicted on those young people and dragging them out of their house in the way that we did was any less than perhaps what they might have experienced had they remained in that household. The difficulty is that our social workers, as Mr. Hipkins said earlier, are in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If they don't act and something happens, you can bet your bottom dollar there would be another snap debate in this house and we'd all be out, there'd be a big public outcry. And then when they do take action, people say they're over the top. Mr. Speaker, we've got to make sure that we protect young people and children to the best of the ability that we can. We also need to make sure that we give those dedicated social workers the very best system to work within that we can, so they can do the very best that they can. Mr. Speaker, the biggest protective factor that I've ever identified in probably 20 years of youth and social work for young people is that they feel connected to something that is bigger than themselves, whether it be their family, a sports team, a drama club, whatever it is. But Mr. Speaker, when we bring children into the care of the state for their own protection, that is the hardest thing for us to replicate because we have a bureaucracy, because we have structures and we have a certain way of doing things in order to provide appropriate, I must say, accountabilities. Mr. Speaker, I have full confidence in this Minister. I have full confidence in this government to do this overhaul of the Child, Youth and Family Service to ensure that we will do the very best for these young people.